reporting very broadly on the energy situation in the country and some of the cadence of these meetings, these briefings could be even weekly, so that we are able to take you through some of the pertinent issues that are receiving urgent attention in the ministry. So thank you very much for joining, and good morning to the viewers back at home. The last time I was on this podium, I made the point that we were doing everything possible to ensure that we are able to address a new phenomenon, and that is the issue of load reduction. And that has to do with the downstream capacity constraints as it relates to reticulation. I'm going to show you the numbers that we don't have a problem on the generation side. We are experiencing new problems on the reticulation side. Mainly municipalities, and ESCOM is also playing in that space, and is an area that requires our urgent attention. I did make the point that we have engaged with SALGA, and we are pulling together with SALGA on the best way of ensuring that we protect the interest of municipalities, we safeguard the interest of ESCOM. I've made the point that ESCOM is owed collectively about 78 billion rands by municipalities, and in return, municipalities are owed collectively about 349 billion rands by various categories of customers. So it's individual households, it's businesses, it's also government. So we require a solution that attends to all of those issues, but also to ensure that when we experience the phenomenon of load reduction, you are able to minimize, if you like, collateral damage to the extent that is possible. What do I mean by collateral damage? There are people who are very obedient, diligent customers who pay their monthly bills diligently, very religious in paying those monthly accounts, but they are also affected by the phenomenon of load reduction. So it's important that we protect everyone, but also ensure that we protect the poor households, those who genuinely can't afford because of economic constraints, a number of reasons, and of course they don't have the means and the ability to pay their monthly account. So it's important that we are able to protect those. We also know that now there are fatal shortcomings with regards to free basic electricity that we have observed. At least we know that there's about 10 million households in this country that qualifies for free basic electricity. But what we know is that only 2 million are receiving this free basic electricity as a result of challenges on the municipal side. And that has to do largely with the rate at which they are registering the indigents on their indigent register so that they can benefit from this free basic electricity. And yet municipalities are receiving this grant. So I think it's important that we are able to resolve this question so that we are able to protect the poor. As the President has mentioned, one of the priorities of the 6th, 7th administration, priority number 2, is fighting poverty and also the escalating cost of living. And the cost of utilities is a big part of household spend in this country. So we are addressing that question to ensure that the 8 million plus households that are entitled to this free basic electricity that are not getting it, and yet this grant is given to municipalities and also to ESCOM, gets to benefit from that. We are going to resolve that with SALGA. I must say that we have found that in the presidency of Mr. Stofile, the president of SALGA, we've got an excellent ally, and we are more than confident with the leadership of local government that we are going to resolve this question. And then the second point I want to mention in relation to this is that as the ministry we have been engaging with some of the innovations led by private sector, and we have found an innovation that we think can be the best template of helping us to resolve this question going into the future. And this has been tried and tested in about 3 municipalities. The one is Beyers Naudé in the Eastern Cape. The other 2 municipalities are Khemisberg and also Namakoi in the Northern Cape. What this solution does, it helps to resolve a number of questions. The first one is to make sure that the municipalities do comply with the grant conditions rather for the write-off. And then the second one is that even if you are not, have not applied for a write-off, it is possible for you to be able to do two things as a result of this intervention. The first one is to pay your debts, and then the second one is to make sure that you are able to pay your current account without diminishing the financial viability of municipalities. So what we have sought to do is to nominate about 2 municipalities per province that are going to be candidate of the second pilot of these municipalities, where we are going to ensure that we stress test this solution. And we'll have working with SALGA and the various provinces, just get municipalities, but the municipalities that are going to receive priorities are the ones that are the top debtors to ESCOM. The ones that owe the most amount of money, those are the ones that we are going to target, ensure that we work with them. Of course, the municipalities must opt in. So we don't necessarily have an instrument to force municipalities to come into this space. But we have found that working with SALGA, and I'm sure working with Minister Tlhabisa, we should find a solution on how best to address this situation. I'm making this point that in addition to the electricity pricing policy that I made mention of the last time, the fact that the electricity has increased almost 400% in the last 10 years or so, it is important that we find innovative solutions to address this question. But it's also important that for the households that can afford, the middle income households, they are also experiencing severe pressures. So it's important that we are able to provide relief to those households, and not just the protection of the poor, but everyone across the board. I made the point that we want to achieve two things with the electricity pricing policy. The first one is to ensure that electricity is affordable to low-income households, and the second one is to make sure that it's cost-reflective for all customers. And that's what we're working on with the Deputy Minister, Samantha Graham-Murray, the rest of the team, and I'm confident that we should be able to come back to the country and indicate what are those measures that we are putting in place to ensure that the electricity is affordable, and in fact we don't experience conditions of energy poverty. And then the second part I really want to mention, and I'll expand this with a bit more detail, is that yes, we are seeing an exceptional performance on the generation side as a result of the measures that have been put into place. Like I said, this has been engineered, is orchestrated, is deliberate, and of course all of these things are coming together. It's a constellation of the efforts, the people issues, the engineering issues, the financing issues, and also addressing issues of malfeasance across the board at the ESCOM, of course led by Dr. Mteto as the chair of the board and Mr. Dan Marokane as the group CEO. So it's a constellation of that. But I think there's also shining, if you like, examples of what can be achieved from a situation of the lowest moment to what we're beginning to see as, if you like, green shoots. And I really want to elevate 3 specific power stations that have seen the most exceptional improvement from the lows that they've experienced over a period of time. So if you had to do an analysis between the period of March this year to August, is that there's 3 great performers. So they are the ones who have been consistent at performing. So I'm not mentioning those ones. And in that category, really, I'm talking about Kusile, Majuba, and Matla. And then there's a category of power stations that have been experiencing significant challenges. But we have seen now with the stewardship, the leadership at those power stations, they are giving us the results that we expect of them. The workers there at these 3 power stations have been hard at it to ensure that we are able to see the kind of improvements that we are seeing. I was seeing some of the mainstream publications saying ESCOM is producing more than what is required. Of course, that's great for the economy. We will tell you when we say we're out of the woods, when we say we have resolved load shedding, we'll tell you at the right time when we're able to substantiate that in numbers. But these stations have been key. The first station is Tutuka. Tutuka has experienced a significant amount of challenges over a period of time. I've reported about the experiences of Tutuka on multiple occasions when I was here, and I made the point that the ESCOM leadership took the decision to deploy Mr. Bruce Moyo to go and lead the turnaround at Tutuka. We are seeing those results now. Just during this period I've mentioned, March to August, the unplanned capacity loss factor, that is the amount of time that these units have been out of generation, not giving us the megawatts, has reduced by about 29%. So that's significant from where Tutuka started at. So they've moved from 2,411 megawatts. So essentially these are megawatts that we are losing, we are not generating anything as a result of the units being down. And today, as I speak to you, the team has brought it down to 949 megawatts. And they continue to make the kind of improvements that we are making and that we are expecting. So we really want to say thank you very much to Mr. Bruce Moyo and the rest of the Tutuka team. Of course, myself and the DM will be visiting the power station to express our most sincere appreciation on behalf of the entire country for the work that they are doing, the kind of improvements that we are seeing. And then the second one is Kendal. So as you know, Kendal, there were major issues with regards to exceeding the emission standards. So there had to be a number of interventions that had to be made. The first major intervention that Mr. Ngumalo made as the executive in charge of generation was to change the leadership there. And then he brought a seasoned power station manager in the form of Ms. Tshepiso Temo, who has done exceptional work there and essentially lifted the morale of the team, reconfigured the constitution of the leadership team at Kendal. So what are the results that we are seeing? Today, Mr. Piso has made it possible that we are able to reduce the unplanned capacity loss factor. Moved it from 2,500 megawatts out, and now we're sitting at about 919 megawatts that are out. And of course, they continue to do exceptional work. So we really want to say to Tshepiso there and the rest of the Kendal team, please keep up the excellent work. I'm saying this, conveying this word of appreciation on behalf of the country and of course by extension the President on the work that you are doing. And then the third of these emerging stars is our station at Kriel, and it also happens to be led by another woman in the form of Ms. Morongwe Rapasha. We have seen exceptional results. The reduction in the unplanned capacity loss factor has gone down 53% from 1,400 to about 508 megawatts. So I'm making this point just to illustrate the fact that the people issues do matter. And the ESCOM leadership has taken that into account. And the fact that you place the most seasoned, experienced, loyal, patriotic individuals to be at the helm of those power stations has given us the kind of results that are required. And of course, just a coincidence that 2 of the 3 happen to be women, and I'm mentioning this during the Women's Month, but they are there, Tshepiso and Morongwe, on the basis of the exceptional competence and the experience that they've accumulated over time. These are the kind of results we are seeing. I was saying now to the team that perhaps if we could have 80% of the station managers being women, I'm sure the EAF could be above 80%, close to 90%. So thank you very much to the work that the team is doing. But the point I'm making really is that we are seeing exceptional results. I want to take a bit of time just to say the following before I give you the details of the performance of the system. That the President has put in place, if you like, South Africa's commitment to a just energy transition. This is on the back of the nationally determined contributions. These are voluntary, if you like, targets that we have set ourselves on the back of the Copenhagen discussions at the COP, the fact that as opposed to a top-down approach, there must be a bottom-up approach. By that I mean the world powers and all the major countries in the world, in their quest to ensure that we reduce the effects of greenhouse gas emissions, and by extension address the issues of climate change, because there is a rich body of literature that suggests that there's a correlation between greenhouse gas emission and climate change. And for us to be able to address that, it is important that, as opposed to negotiators at a global level determining what these national targets should be, it's important that it is countries that must commit to that on their own, having taken account of their own local conditions, but still set out ambitious targets on how they can achieve this just energy transition. I'm mentioning this because in the 7th administration, the Minister of Energy and Electricity now is a convener of the Interministerial Committee on the JET program. So essentially, it's a department that is a primary and preeminent driver of that. And of course, the President maintains the stewardship of this program. It is important that we are able to lift this conversation, and in the next iteration of the update, we'll go deeper into the kind of milestones that we have achieved, but also what will constitute the agenda of the JET IP program in the 7th administration. I'm making this point because it is the intention of the ministry that we are mainstreaming this conversation. So it's part of a bigger public discourse, but of course the country is committed to a set of objectives. Like I said, this is going to help us to ensure that we achieve a well-managed transition to a low-carbon economy, and then it is concretized so in a very firm plan, what we call the JET investment plan that will span over a period 2023 to 2027. But what we then did in November of last year, to give concrete meaning, if you like, to programmatize this intervention, we then agreed on a JET implementation plan. Because I think one of the major shortcomings of government is that there's an articulation of plans, and then we're very thin on how that is going to be implemented. The resources from a people point of view, the financing, and also the kind of regulatory adjustments that are necessary to ensure that you give effect to this. So we approved the JET implementation plan. So it's the intention of the ministry to ensure that we pull our peers together and ensure that finally we get to a point where there's a greater level of appreciation in the country that this plan is going to help us to a low-carbon economy and protecting our sovereign interests. So it's not something at the margins. It's central to this conversation, including the issues around the distribution side. I think there's some degree of grant, concession, funding that sits in this JET implementation plan that has not been fully exploited. Some of the major powers have come on board, made money available, started at about 8.5 billion US dollars. It's gone up to about 12 billion US dollars over a period of time because there's other players who have come on board. So it's important that we are able to show our bona fides as a country, of course protecting national interests. What this funding does not impose, if you like, what this trajectory is. It's us who have determined the just energy plan. So it's important that on the back of that implementation plan, like I said, it's adopted by government, we're able to pull everyone along. And of course, it straddles across the entire value chain, from generation, transmission, and distribution. We have not fully exploited that. We are going to do it, so, and then we'll keep the country abreast on the kind of work that is required. We know that the scale of investments that is required for us to achieve the ambitions of this just transition is about 1.5 trillion rands for us to be able to set the ambitions that we have set for ourselves. So it's a huge ticket. So we know that the fiscals won't be able to carry that. So it's important that we look at bespoke financing instruments to support this. And in fact, these instruments do exist within the context of the JET IP, and we really want to give it significant and additional momentum. It's going to help us on the issues of transmission, it's going to help us on the issues of distribution, and of course we want to assure the country that we'll enter those discussions with the interest of the country at heart. And I know for a fact that also the players in that space really want to help South Africa. And South Africa is the one that determines the agenda. They don't determine an agenda on our part. So there's, if you like, an intersection of interest between what we want to do and what these major powers have brought onto the table. And like I said, they will do that in the best interest of the country. And of course, to be able to action this, we have put together, there's the project management unit in the presidency is the one that is working very closely on this. Of course, the IMC as an interministerial structure will determine essentially what that roadmap is with regards to execution. And essentially, that interministerial committee will focus really on 4 areas. So the first one will be providing political leadership for the implementation of the JET IP. And of course, at the bureaucratic level, administrative and technical level, the PMU will be running with that. It's important that we are able to provide aerial political cover to ensure that every step of the way we are able to meet the national interest. And the JET IP does exactly that. And that's why we really want to move with speed. Because if we don't do that, we are likely going to first miss an opportunity as a country to help us use these resources to address some of the attendant challenges that are confronting us. And of course, at the secondary level, it's really about the bona fides of a country, our country. When we commit to something and other players come on board to support that which we have committed to, and you don't get to deliver. So I think it's about the credibility of the country as a credible partner in any transaction. So I think it's important that we are able to resolve those 2 questions, and we've got every ambition to achieve that. And then the other one is to ensure that, I mean, this is a fluid space. From time to time, we will review and engage on the JET IP progress reports, but also ensure that we are able to support its execution. And that's why we are going to mainstream it as part of a national conversation. As we give you updates, we are able to share with you what is this JET IP, what does it, what do we stand to benefit as a country, as communities in where you have a coal-fired power station, so that there's a greater level of appreciation on the work that we are doing. And also want to identify and align on ways to unblock policy challenges to the JET implementation plan. To the extent that there are policy hurdles that undermine our ability to execute, I think this IMC will do exceptionally well to remove those so that we are able to move with speed, appreciating, if you like, what is a sovereign interest. So there is no conflict between what sovereign interest is and the JET IP. It's us who determined what the implementation plan is, and when we did that, we are alive to what these interests are, so that we are able to proceed with speed. And of course, to the extent that is necessary, we'll make recommendations to Cabinet on how best to improve the implementation of the JET IP. But as the President is instructed, it's important that we are able to move with speed and resolve these challenges across the value chain. And then as I move towards the end, just on the generation performance, of course, exceptional performance. I really want to caution that load shedding is not behind us. I think it's an important point to make. Of course, in the next 3 weeks or so, ESCOM will be sharing with you what the summer outlook is. We still are buoyant about the performance of this generation plant. I've mentioned to you the emerging the emerging stars rather from the fleet of the power stations. I mentioned Tutuka, Kriel, and Kendal. Having said all of the above, I think we need to caution against any early declaration just to decree load shedding as being behind us. We do everything possible to resolve this question, but the numbers do indicate that we are within touching distance. A statement that I've been making from time to time, the fact that we are expecting Medupi Unit 4 to give us 800 megawatts, bring fire up Kusile Unit number 6, another 800 megawatts. We're hoping to get an extension of life of Quebec unit number 2. We succeeded on unit number 1. It's not automatic, you are getting it on unit number 2. We are not complacent, we are doing everything by the book, ensuring that they cross all the T's, dot all the I's, be diligent in what we submit to the nuclear regulator of the country. We are still optimistic of getting that extension of life for 20 years of Quebec unit number 2. It will give us an additional 980 megawatts. So the point I'm making is that we do expect that by end of August this year, just from the ESCOM fleet, we should be getting an additional 2,500 megawatts. So the UCLF has come down by 8.8 percentage points. If you look where we are now, the UCLF, remember when I say UCLF, the unplanned capacity loss factor, I'm talking about the unreliability of these units, that is units just failing on their own, or the second one is their efficiency, the extent to which they approximate their design capacity. So those are the two, if you like, variables that we want to bring down. We are bringing them down successfully, even much better than we had expected. I do make the point that we have registered about 8.8 percentage points. And if you look at the, in terms of megawatts, so we have brought that from what, in terms of the winter outlook, we had said the optimistic case, we had said that, ESCOM had said that we think that optimistically, we should bring it down to about 14,000 megawatts. If we are at 14,000 megawatts, there will not be load shedding during the winter period. We know there's not been load shedding during the winter period. But a significant figure is the following, is that as opposed to the 14,000 megawatts, that was the optimistic case, what we have been registering is about 10,500 megawatts. So essentially about a 4,000 improvement from our own optimistic case. I put differently, if you compare the same period last year, we're sitting at about 15,500 of UCL megawatts of UCLF. Now, as I speak to you, it's about 10,508. Again, a 5,000 megawatts improvement. That's significant. And of course, it gets to be reflected in the EAF. There's a correlation there. The lower the UCLF, and of course, assuming that the planned capacity loss factor is the same, then you are going to see an improvement in your EAF. And of course, we can see that the EAF has improved from the same period of last year. We're sitting at 55%, 55.32%, and now we're at 63.22%, a significant improvement. And if you look at just the month of August, or starting from the 5th until today, I think we're sitting at about 67%. So that's a tremendous improvement. So I want to say to the country, we're on the right path. We have always believed in this strategy, like I said, orchestrated, deliberate, and we're seeing the kind of results that we're seeing. So we are confident about the ability for us to continue on this path. And also this with the planned maintenance at about 5,600 megawatts. If you look at the same period, the winter period last year, I think we're at about 3,500 megawatts. So we're still up on planned maintenance, but the EAF continues to show the kind of improvements that we're seeing. So it's thanks to what the team is doing there. And again, to represent it in other form, if your EAF is up, it means that you are less reliant on your open cycle gas turbine. So you are burning less and less of diesel. So we can say that we have, since the beginning of the financial year, we have brought down the use of diesel by 73%. So we have saved about 9.6 billion rands compared to the same period of last year. The same 1st of April to the 7th of June, we have spent 9.59 billion rand less than what was spent last year. So that's significant. And I think this is an important point to make, in that the more we improve the generation performance, it's going to find expression in the tariff increases. Because if your generation relies heavily on expensive forms of generation, it must be reflected in the tariff. We said that the tariff must be cost reflective. And in fact, if your cost, you are able to show to NERSA that, look, the performance of the units has deteriorated. As a result of that, I'm relying on burning diesel, and therefore I'm asking for this, for the following tariff increase. It's going to weigh heavy on the users in this country. So I'm confident that we're getting to a stage where really these are going to be what they are meant to be, peaking plants. They only come in as and when we need them. They are not there most of the time. And as you can see, the load factor, the amount of time that we've been calling on them since the 1st of April, it averages about 4.8%. And if you look at the same period last year, we're using them about 20.6% of the time. So that's significant, that number. If you look at the kind of phenomenal progress we've made since the 1st of August, in fact, that number comes down dramatically. From that 4.82%, it has come almost half to about 2.83%. So that's significant because it's got the implications on what the tariff that the Eskom will be asking for going forward. So we really are optimistic about the situation. But like I said, I think the one area that is now receiving attention is the issue of load reduction. And I don't want to suggest to the country and those that are affected by load reduction that that is going to be an easy solve. It's going to be complicated. Like I said, we're balancing their interest as consumers, the interest of municipalities, the interest of Eskom, the protection of this infrastructure. But I'm confident that we are closer to finding that situation, and we are going to provide this, the relief that is needed to many households. I did make the point the last time that just on the Eskom side, the number of households that are affected by this load reduction is about 360,000 against the 7 million household that Eskom is servicing. So we're talking really about 5%. But that 5% matter because it's largely in poor areas. It's largely in informal areas. So it's important that we don't create an impression that we look catering for those who can afford the affluent areas and we are neglecting the poor areas. I want to send out a very strong message that we do everything possible to protect the interest of low-income earners and those who don't have the means really to support themselves so that they don't continue to be part of this collateral damage going forward. And of course, we do provide much deeper insights on what has been a month-to-month improvement with regards to the generation, what has been a weekly improvement. So essentially, the net picture just reconfirms that they were on a good path. The net picture just confirms the efficacious nature of our intervention. It's giving us the kind of results that are desirable. And most of the households can see that. I'm saying most because you still have that load reduction. Because for other households, they've got 5 to 10 hours in a day where they don't have electricity. That situation is untenable. And the message like I'm making, as I reiterate the point I made earlier on, that's our focal point. So it's receiving our undivided attention, and in fact, it's urgent, the steps that we are taking. We need to pull local government with us so that we are able to find uniform solutions that are enduring, sustainable, and protects the interest of all the stakeholders. And of course, in rand value terms, I did make the point, if you look from month to month, that the spend on the diesel has really come down, and that's good for the Eskom's own balance sheet, its liquidity. We can reinvest this money back into the people and reinvest this money back into this unit so that we continue to see the kind of phenomenal improvements that we have been seeing and we stave off load shedding. Thank you very much.